That was deep.
You gotta look deep to find the deep things. If all you ever do in your life is stay at the surface, you'll never find anything worth exploring.
Here we go now. Here we go now. Let's get up in this flow. With me, your host, Joe.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode on The Flow with Joe. And I have a new, exciting segment that I'm adding to the show once a month, where we'll have one guest to come in and give their perspective on a particular topic. And this week, I have with us a viral sensation, Mr. Rob Lambertino out of New Jersey. He went viral from a mini clip. He was getting interviewed in the mall, and that clip on Instagram has over 9 million views. I'm not sure what it has on TikTok or all the other socials, but just on Instagram, it's 9 million views. And that interview was a clip by CG3 Music. So if you're on Instagram, go over and follow CG3 Music, because he's the reason why Mr. Rob is on today. Everyone, give a welcome to Mr. Rob.
It is a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to speak with you today. You can also find myself and CG3 on TikTok under the same handles. Myself being at Frog Visage and him obviously being at CG3 Music.
Very cool. I have a question. What does frog visage mean?
Visage would be Latin for face, and frog, well, the combination of frog face is a reference to an MMO I played growing up, where my cosmetics that I always chose to wear was a frog mask and a mime costume. So I'd be walking around looking like I had a frog face.
Oh, that is so cool. I love that. So Rob, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from.
I grew up about 15 miles and still live about 15, 20 miles outside of Camden, New Jersey. I don't live in a great town. I don't live in a horrible town. Grew up pretty poor. No cable, nothing really fancy growing up. Didn't spend a lot of time outside. Got lost in the world of video games, The Legend of Zelda, with my grandmother growing up. That grew into a lot of the nerdier aspects that you'd expect. Growing up in the 90s, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, which then turned into anime and other things like that. And that grew into a love of electronics, programming, networking, and even more nerdy stuff, which evolved again into Dungeons and Dragons and roleplay, which is really where my journey of why do we think this way starts.
Gotcha. I love that. My daughter is a huge Legend of Zelda fan also. She was Link for Halloween. So that's pretty awesome. Y'all would probably actually have a lot in common. So are you into cosplay, things like that?
I am. I don't have the space to get into it as much as I would like to. Me and my girlfriend actually just got back last week from a anime convention in New York that we went to. And that was really interesting to see some of the really detailed cosplayers. There was somebody who made their own 16 or 15 foot mobile Gundam suit that they actually were inside of on stilts and everything. They could control all their fingers to it individually. So it's neat to dress up as the character. I think it's so much more interesting to see the amount of work and creativity that goes into these costumes. People don't realize how many different skills come together to create something that might only be worn once.
Right. I agree. Yeah, the costumes are pretty cool. And even I've never been to an anime convention or a cosplay convention, but just to see the short videos and the creation that the videographer has to put into it to make it look like real life is super cool. So I do enjoy that.
I remember one of the costumes was a Genshin Impact character, and for the life of me, I can't remember the character's name. But they had the sequencing beads you'd see on lampshades and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But because they created the outfit themselves, they had to hand sew the 18,000 beads on the costume.
Wow, that's a lot of work. 18,000 beads hand sewn.
And
Wow.
that's just the beads. That's not the embroidery. That's not the EVA foam or whatever they were using for a spine material for the weapon that goes with the character. That's not the hat. That's not the cloth. That's not the coloring.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. It's mind blowing how creative people can get, right? So I want to ask you, on that snippet on attribute, you said attributing actions to incompetence rather than malice is profound. That was like huge. What sparked that perspective in your own life, and how has it influenced your journey as a video creator?
What sparked it is really just I used to work in a McDonald's for a number of years.
Mhm.
And some people would be having just such a terrible day. You know, they pull up, the kids are screaming in the car. You can just see it on their face. They're completely worn out. Everybody's seen a mother with that face where their kid is just screaming and they are just completely done. Doesn't matter what happens to them. And something as little as a couple extra chicken nuggets or a good smile or oh, don't worry about the change. I've got it right here. Somebody else said they didn't want theirs would change their day. And a lot of my repeat customers, they'd come in really upset one day or really angry, you know, they might lash out at me, but they'd apologize for it later. And
Mhm.
it really is that I'm just a dude in a McDonald's. They didn't mean it to me. I just happened to be there at the time. And they
Right.
all have kids, they all had school to go to, you know, college classes, they all had individual stressors, and at the end of the day, they all still had to eat, sleep, and work. Just
Right.
like I had to eat, sleep, and work. So we were all going through life. It might not be the exact same, but we all have the same emotions and the same things going on. We all have problems that need solving. And that really helped me not take things personally when they were freaking out over the chicken nuggets being missing. Because it's not about the chicken nuggets. They didn't really care about chicken nuggets. Their day was just already bad, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And
Mm.
once I realized that, I just started trying to think more like that in my own life. You know, did that person really mean to cut me off, or did they just not realize they were about to miss their turn?
Right.
And then I thought about how many times I did something similar where I might have just swerved down a side street, not giving the person behind me enough time to realize I was even slowing down. And it's not
Mhm.
that I tried to make them wreck or get in their way, I just didn't realize where I was. And the more I looked at the way I was acting and interacting with the world, the more I realized that it's far more likely that people are doing these things accidentally or without realizing it than that there is they're out to get me. They don't know me. They didn't know my name. I doubt they could even tell you what car I was driving if I happened to cut them off. They had no idea. And the
Right.
same thing happens to me. As far as my journey as a video creator, I'm still learning to think that what I have to say matters at all. I lived with those rules to myself for so long, thinking, it's just me, and that's all it was. Even when it was recorded, CG3, right after the recording ended, said, yo, we have fire here. This is going to blow up. And I said, it's whatever. My girlfriend saw the video. She said, this is going to go viral. I said, no, it isn't. It's whatever. And then it did. And I was like, okay, what now?
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened when you did say what now?
I started recording what I thought people might want to hear or other rules that I live by. You know, don't be afraid to try new things. Worst case scenario, you don't like it. Don't be afraid to take a risk, but make sure you do it in a smart way. It's okay to have to take a break. It's not okay to completely quit.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Wow. I feel that way sometimes too, having a podcast. You know, and my podcast is fairly new. It's like 7 months old. But it's like, why would anybody care what I have to say? But just as like some things relate to us, like through other people's content, I guess, or, reading something on Reddit and, we find it relatable and it's like, well, that's good advice. Some people out in the world would think the same about our voices and what we have to say. So I love your content, by the way. So, and I implement your tips and strategies. Like, you posted a video today, about trying different things, and I found it very relatable. It was a great message, and people need to know that stuff. So Um, so I say keep going, and I do say you need to get a podcast going because I keep seeing where you comment places about
Yeah,
like
we
I'm gonna get it.
me and my co-host did do one recording already, but it came off as more of like a lecture than a conversation, and we
Mhm,
hated it, and we recorded that right before we left for New York because my co-host went with us. There was a group of 5 or 6 of us that left from South Jersey and stayed up near New York City for the weekend.
mhm.
So then, come back from a vacation, you need time to unpack. I had side work lined up. We had to get all our cosplay stuff put away. It's the changing of the seasons, so we had to get all our spring and summer clothes put away and bring out the fall and winter stuff now that it's getting colder again. Either tomorrow, depending on what time I get done with my side work, or Wednesday, I think, we're going to give the recording another go.
Yeah, and then I say put the first one out there. It's all trial and error, and see what the audience thinks.
Yeah, but I don't wanna put out something that I'm not happy with. It wasn't at all
Mm,
the vibe I was going for. It very much so felt and sounded like I was just dictating something to somebody rather than having a conversation. I want
yeah,
something much more casual, something where it is just us having a conversation. It doesn't feel or sound like I'm reading a Wikipedia article.
right. You're pretty funny. You're not laughing, but that was pretty funny.
I tend to have a quieter laugh. It takes, like, really unexpected or, like, I don't wanna say stupid, but borderline stupid humor to get me to really laugh out loud.
Right, yeah.
That good hearty closed mouth chuckle is my signature.
Mm. Mine, I don't know. I just love good, quick-witted humor. So it'll get me to laugh. And then I love, the stupid stuff too, but I just laugh a lot. I love to laugh.
I am going to start doing more live streaming now that I have the time. I don't know if you've seen anything about Baldur's Gate 3, which released some months ago.
Hmm.
That's going to be the first game I live stream. I love the studio that produced it. I love the story of the game. I went through it once on my own already for my own enjoyment. So I'm planning to do another run where I listen to and interact with my Twitch chat, and hopefully we can find some messages together along the way. Because I
Oh,
think that regardless of the media you're consuming, there's a lesson to be learnt in every story, and it doesn't matter if it's a cartoon meant for your enjoyment or if it's a historical piece. I
hmm,
think there's something for everybody to find in almost anything. You just have to find a way to relate it to your life.
I agree. I agree. And now that I have children, I see all the lessons in the cartoons. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many good life lessons in these cartoons, that adults can use. And yeah, so I definitely agree with you. So I love that. And at the end, you'll have to like give your Twitch account, all of that, so where everybody can find you.
See, that's the smart thing because I did that when I created all of it. It's all under Frog Visage.
Oh,
Everything that I do professionally, content wise, is under Frog Visage.
I love it. And that's frog underscore visage, right?
Yes.
And then for everybody listening, I will plug that into the description box below. So make sure you tap in with Rob. So you kind of already hit on this a little bit, but so in our world where everyone is caught up in their complexities, like we just spoke about, with your McDonald's situation when you were working at McDonald's, and but you emphasize the importance of being aware of the world around us. So, how do you personally navigate this complexity? And what advice do you have? I guess I would say this, because you already kind of gave me how you navigate it. But what advice do you have for others trying to do the same?
Start small. Honestly, start small. Look at on your way home one day, or when you get up in the morning. Let's say you live with your significant other or you have roommates.
Hmm.
Make a pot of coffee. If you normally make yourself a cup and everybody likes the same coffee, just make a pot instead of a cup. And then just pay attention to the absolute joy on their face seeing that the coffee's already made. Do the dishes one day when you weren't supposed to. See how much those little things can make a difference? Because it's really easy to get caught up in these grand gestures. Oh, I cleaned the whole house, but now you're exhausted. Now they have to cook dinner for you.
Mhm.
Your day isn't made up of several big things. I mean, it is. It's made up of several big chunks. You know, the average person, you wake up, you go to work, you go to lunch, you work, you get done work, you go home, you cook dinner, maybe you get a little bit of time to yourself. That's 8 or 9 big chunks that you have.
Right.
But waking up isn't just waking up. It's getting out of bed, getting dressed, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, mouthwash, breakfast. So just doing one of those things better for yourself or making it easier for the people around you, they'll catch on. Things absolutely travel in patterns. And it might not be right away. It might take a week. It might take a month for these things to trickle back to you, but they will. It will get back to you, and you will see the world in a more positive light. There's a lot of bad things that get reported on and we hear about in the world. But if
Mhm.
you dig a little bit deeper than what the news shows you, we're in the safest, friendliest time period in human history.
What makes you say that?
Let's think back to when everybody says America was great, the 50s and 60s. Economically, we were a powerhouse.
Mhm.
You know, that's when you have the milkshake shops on every corner and the soda fountains.
Mhm.
And you also had, I don't know if you got home safe because I can't call you when you have to drive down a country road in the dark and who knows what's going to happen. You had make sure you're home before the street lights are on because we don't know if you'll be taken off the streets. And these are
Right.
absolutely things that happened. That's the period when Dahmer was active.
Mhm.
That's when John Wayne Gacy was active. Prolific serial killers that got caught. And there's hundreds of others that didn't.
Mhm.
Even if you go back to the 70s and 80s, drug parties in the middle of the woods with no hope of getting help if you needed it. Nobody really looking out for, if you were partaking, they didn't say, "Oh, I trust this person, it's not laced." It was just, "Okay, cool, I guess I'm getting extra messed up."
Right. Okay.
And we are absolutely more connected as a people now with the advent of social media, be that for the good or the bad. But if you need a support group for whatever trauma you have, you can find it.
Mhm.
There's people out there that you don't know that are rooting for your success. I'm one of them. I would much rather see you be successful even if you're stressed, then desolate and stressed.
Mhm.
You know, OSHA is more powerful than ever. We're not sending children to crawl into machinery to clear gaps.
Right.
We are absolutely in the safest time period. With wars going on right now, it might not feel like it, but
Mhm.
other than Russia, Ukraine, and Israel Hamas right now, there's not really any major wars. And Russia Ukraine has been going on for a while. But it's not like an all-out world war. They're not trying to completely exterminate each other.
Right.
So there's 2 wars that popped off in the last year or 2. I'm 27. There was Iraq, Afghanistan, which seemed long and bloody, but they really weren't.
Mhm.
And a lot of the conflicts that are going on in the world are mostly against insurrectionist or terrorist cells. It's not organized groups or countries trying to roll each other over for the most part. So your chances of getting drafted or being actually sent off to war in the vast majority of the world are slim to none.
That's very true. And now that you mention that, I can understand and see. And because back then there was no social media to where it was, that type of news, the John Wayne Gacy, the parties, people missing and everything. It was hard for people around the world to find out about that.
It
And
was milk cartons.
right, exactly. Milk cartons. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so when you break it down like that, I guess we are.
When you were growing up, right? Did your mom always tell you no further than the street corner? Don't cross that road?
And be home before the street lights come on.
Now, do you think that's because she didn't trust you or because she didn't trust the world around you?
She didn't trust the world around me.
Exactly. I wasn't allowed to walk more than 4 blocks from home most of my life.
Mhm.
But then the town I lived in got a little bit better. I made a couple of bad friends. Not that they were bad people, just they were involved in bad things. But because they knew me, if some of those bad things, some gang activity or whatever was heading, my general direction, they'd talk to their friends and say, "Hey, don't involve this guy. He's cool. Like, just ignore him." And
Right.
suddenly they trusted the world around me more. But you go back to the 70s, 80s, 90s. Oh, we rode around without helmets. All right, well, what was the mortality rate then? How many
Mhm.
people would go, riding down a hill on their bike, wipe out without a helmet on, and be found 2 weeks later, just in a bush?
Right. Right. Yep. You're right. And then same with car seats. Same with car seats. I can't believe, back in the 50s, 60s that children were allowed to ride in the car without the car seat.
It's
You
even the
know.
cars themselves. Everybody thinks they're less safe now because they come out of an accident looking like a cube. But instead of all that energy coming through the car into you, it gets dissipated in those crumple zones. They are way safer than they used to be.
Mhm.
We know so much more about how little injuries add up that it's insane.
Right. Right. Wow. You just kind of disrupted my mind with that because I never thought about it. On how safe the world is right now versus other time
It's
periods.
not to say that there's not areas where it's not safe. Like if you're out in the countryside where you maybe don't have reception and you're riding an ATV through the woods and you take a jump a little rough and you catch a tree branch through the arm, you're
Mhm.
still not in a safe space. But
Mhm.
when you get to help, and if you get to help, the medicine and the response times are so much better than they used to be that instead of it being, oh, well, now you're going to miss a limb, you're just not going to go riding for a while.
Right.
So it's more than just, you know, how safe you are in your actions, but how well we're able to recover from things too.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Wow. Um. So another question. You mentioned that if you don't look deep or look deep within, you won't find anything to explore, or you won't, find deep things. Like, how do you strike a balance between exploring the depths and then staying grounded in everyday chaos?
A lot of it's time and fatigue. If you've had a rough day and you don't know if you can bring yourself to make dinner, that is not the time for you to sit and ponder the wonderings of the universe. But if you
Mhm.
have the time and you're energized and you're bored, instead of just mindlessly scrolling down YouTube, throw on a TV show you've watched 100 times and really think about what they say. Maybe you're watching something and a quote just sticks you. Your character says something, you're just like, huh, why did they say that? And then you maybe Google the quote. My favorite to hit people with, right? Let's
Mhm.
see if you can. Let's see if you know it, right? Blood is thicker than.
Water.
Is that the quote? Is that the full saying?
I never looked into it.
Do you want to
It's
know what the full saying is?
yes.
The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.
Mm.
And that's not a religious text.
Mhm.
Covenant in this context is a bond that is formed, a promise made. It dates back to Roman legions.
Mm.
And what it really means is that bond that you've chosen to have, that you've experienced with your brothers in arms and gone through strife with, is more powerful than whatever you were born into. So the actual saying has the complete opposite meaning of how we use it.
Right. Wow. That's mind-boggling. I never knew that.
It's just little things like that. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
pondering deep things is interesting, it's thought provoking, and it's not the same deep for everybody. Deep for
Right.
me might not be deep for you, and it's definitely not deep for Snoop Dogg. But we can all find value in those deep things. And then we can all come back up to the surface, enjoy some ramen, hot pot, and barbecue together, and
Mhm.
have a good time. You need a balance of things.
Right.
To stick with that ocean and diving analogy, right?
Mhm.
You're never going to find ancient ruins floating on the surface of the ocean.
Right.
Like, if you're looking for Atlantis, you have to dive deep.
Mhm.
But surfing is also really fun.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with hanging out at there's nothing wrong with going out on a beach day to enjoy yourself versus going out to say, should I try to land some landscaping work out here? I bet I could make that place look a lot better, and thinking about it from a work perspective. Or just looking at the ocean and wondering how much life has been lost over the years because of pollution or whatever else. They're all valid walks of life. And you need them to be blended together, in my opinion, to live a fulfilling life. You can't
Mhm.
just stay with one thing forever.
Right. Right. Yep. You got to keep getting out and trying different things. I love it. Another question, and I love that analogy. Also, I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to this and catch a few more lessons because this is good. This is really good. That was a great analogy. So, what what in particular about the message that you gave with at CG3 Music struck a chord with people, and what kind of responses have you received from people who've encountered
Believe it or not, the most common thing I see is people reacting to when he asked me if I'm real. I think I misunderstood the question when he asked it. I wasn't sure if when he asked it, if he meant, like, do you actually exist, or if I'm just staying, like, true to myself.
it? Mhm.
And the answer to whether or not I'm staying true to myself is I try. I don't always follow my own advice. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes.
None of us are. Yeah.
But I try. I have rules that I want to live by, and I have people I don't want to be, rather than people I want to be like. So I
Mhm.
try to steer myself away from those things that I don't want to see in myself. I don't always succeed. I lash out at people too. I get angry too. And as much as I say, hey, don't live in those extremes, give yourself a chance to calm down, it's not always feasible.
Mhm.
And then just people looking at the thing as a whole, I think what really makes it stick is that there was an application to the words in real time. It wasn't just the words. You could see how to apply it to the situation right away. I'm willing to bet somebody's heard treat people how you want to be treated in their lifetime. Like, I don't think there's many people that haven't heard that saying one way or another. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what my message boiled down to. But it's one thing to say it and another to see it in action.
Mhm.
99% of the people that went through that shot, because that wasn't the first take he tried to do. CG3 does a lot of your normal public interview kind of stuff that you see on TikTok and Instagram.
Mhm.
He tried 7 or 8 takes before that. He was starting to get fed up with it. But we were in a busy Memorial Day weekend. You can't be upset at people just existing. Most of the people who noticed we were recording, actually everybody who noticed that we were recording, either apologized or went out of their way to avoid the shot.
Mhm.
You can't be upset because people are just existing. And I think being able to apply that, hey, they're not doing this on purpose. This isn't malice. I used the word incompetence. I shouldn't have. I should have used ignorance in that context looking back. Because it's not that there's people. Well, there's a big difference, right? So, like, let's say you get your order routinely wrong at your local McDonald's. They're not
Mhm.
being mean to you. They're probably just not very good at their job. And that's
Okay.
okay. Whereas ignorance in this case would mean they just weren't aware. Like they just didn't see us recording. They just saw guys with cell phones. But I think being able to see that message applied in real time is what really made it stick.
I agree. I agree. It did because you even blew his mind, and it calmed him. I could see him calm down because he was like, "Whoa, he's right."
I think it's entirely that I caught him off guard because everything before that, like one of his more popular videos is what would you do if you woke up as a woman? So in your case, he'd walk up to you and be like, if you woke up as a man tomorrow, what's the first thing you'd do? And if you're just like shopping in Target and you're hit with that question, you're like, um. So for me to turn
Right.
around when he's been trying to do that and be like, hey, relax. I think
Yeah,
I really caught him off guard.
you did.
But no, CG3 is actually, I see a lot of people trying to flame him. Like, oh, he didn't pay attention, he didn't get the message. I caught him way off guard because we didn't even continue it after that. I had a fishing trip the next day, so I went and bought a hat and sunglasses.
Uh huh.
But No, he actually just did a Thanksgiving homeless giveaway too, where he gave away a couple turkey dinners, and I think it was 70 or 80 packs between socks and clothes and toothpaste and everything else.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I just noticed like he was like, he was a little upset then you said that and he just like calmed right down and was like, you're right. And then but I had the same process as he did. I was like, man, he does sound like AI.
I think that's because of how quickly and how precisely I was able to say it. But as I tell everybody, when you have your own rules to live by, your own little mantras in life, it's really easy to recite them. Like, it
Yeah.
might be hard to come up with a rule that you live by, but if you already know it, it is really easy to spit it out.
It is. It is. And it's interesting that you say, almost everyone has heard treat everybody the way you want to be treated because that's like one of the mottos that I live by that I, try to instill in my children. Anytime we go anywhere, I'm like, or to go to the park, particularly any place where they're about to get active with other children. Like, just remember, treat everybody how you want to be treated, but, don't let anybody treat you any kind of way, but still treat everyone how you want to be treated. Oh, okay. What do you like to cook?
We do all kinds of different stuff. We're doing kibasi sandwiches tonight, though.
What's
We're
kebab?
gonna like Polish kibasi. It's kind of like a sausage.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've ever had it before.
I promise you've seen it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
uh, it's similar to andouille sausage, where it comes in a really fat, long link.
Uh huh.
Um, One of the more common ways to serve it is pan fried with an apricot glaze.
Oh, that sounds good.
But we're doing it with peppers and onions. We're going to slit our rolls and do kind of a garlic bread on the inside of the roll. So it's
Mhm.
going to have a garlic bread toasted inside, and then it's going to be, a sausage with peppers and onions.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That sounds really good actually. I might
We
need to fly to
did
Jersey tonight.
we did last night was a lot different compared to tonight. Last night we did bourbon smoked milkfish over a bed of roasted carrots and sweet potatoes.
Mmm, that sounds good. What kind of fish? Sweet fish?
Milkfish.
Milkfish.
It's an Asian dish.
Mm.
They're
So
native to they're native to Southeast China.
oh, okay. So y'all like to cook different cuisines.
There's nothing wrong
Right.
with it. I mean,
Yeah.
look, everybody likes Chinese food, right? But I think everybody knows when you go to your local Chinese place and you get the General Tso's chicken, that's not real Chinese food. Like if you go to an American restaurant and they're like, "We have hamburgers and we have hot dogs and we have French fries," you're like, "Okay, cool, but where's the mashed potatoes, gravy, and meatloaf?"
Right. Yeah. I love that though, and I love that y'all cook what you like to eat when you go out and stuff too. One of my friends actually from New York, she taught me that. She was like, "Look, if you like to eat crab when you go out to eat, she was like, go and spend the same amount of money, at the Asian market, go buy your crab and cook it yourself. And actually, you come out a little bit cheaper." And ever since then, I'd like to cook at home what I would eat if I would go out, which is also a different variety of cuisine too. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Another question. So applying self awareness, right? How do you think if we advocate self awareness, how do you think this translates practically into one's daily life? Like, especially in the age of constant distractions and information overload.
This is an easy one for me. It's the ability to differentiate what you have control over and what you don't.
Mm,
Um, I work in a professional environment where I leave a location and perform work. I fertilize lawns.
mm-hmm,
I don't mix my batch mix myself. I have a different technician that does it. I don't do the schedule. I have somebody else that does it. So when they give me a schedule that includes, say, 160 miles of driving, I know I'm not getting that whole list done. And that's outside of my control. So instead of me worrying about how am I going to get all this done, I instead need to worry about, all right, well, what can I cut off? What's not important? So by differentiating what I do and don't have control over and being aware of my own capabilities, I'm able to more effectively use my time to make myself and the business successful.
Mm.
And the same thing can be done in your personal life. Like if you have clothes that are really nice that you want to take good care of, but you don't own a washer and dryer,
Mhm.
and you're aware of these clothes, you could always set them aside and pick a day to go get them dry cleaned. Maybe you wait until you have a whole load's worth and you find your local dry cleaner and you say, hey, listen, I have a bunch of nice clothes. I want to get them all done at once. Can you do a bulk discount? And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But in recognizing that you don't have the ability to take care of this the right way and you need to outsource it, you're saving yourself the headache and the stress and possibly the cost of the garment.
Right. I love that.
The same thing with hair, skin, recognizing what your own limits are or being able to admit that you don't know something
Mhm.
leads to you being able to ask for the aid. And there's nothing wrong with asking for it.
Right. I agree. Because like, what's the worst they're gonna say? No.
It's not even just that. Maybe, this is the longest my hair has ever been. If I straighten it out right here, it comes down pretty far now.
Uh huh.
How many men in your life know how to put up a proper ponytail or to put their hair in a bun?
I don't. I don't know a lot of men with long hair.
But men with daughters.
Yes. Yes.
Can they put their daughter's hair in a ponytail? Can they put their daughter's hair in a bun?
My ex, he can, but he would struggle with it. But he can do it. But he would definitely
So there would be
struggle.
nothing wrong with him saying, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I have a little girl. If
Mhm.
she's struggling, I want to be able to help.
Right.
And by recognizing that, I don't know how to do this, he can then learn. Up until about a year ago, I had no idea how to take care of hair. I was using, whatever was on sale at the supermarket, whatever I could get on discount. I've
Mhm.
since upgraded to much nicer shampoo, much nicer conditioner. I need a lot less of it because it's a higher quality thing, and
Mhm.
my hair looks better than it ever did.
Yeah, you do have some pretty good box going on over there. I like it. But yeah, I understand now. So it's like the same with like the podcast. Like at first I was trying to do everything, like the editing and then all the posting, the production, everything. And then I was like, this is gonna get overwhelming. Especially with two children, two at the same time. I was like, this is gonna be way too overwhelming. Like I need help. And then I realized like I had a friend who was an audio engineer and he just so happens to start dabbling into video editing as well. And we were able to, work out an exchange. And it's been so much easier to keep going now that I have his help. So and he's like, yeah, you just focus on the content, focus on the show, and just post the show. I got everything else, and it was so
I've
cool. I'm so
Yeah,
appreciative.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking to do art for merch or let me edit stuff for you, and I have a really hard time, especially because I grew up when MySpace was first becoming big,
Mhm.
and I have a background in technology. I know it is very easy to take control of things online when you've been giving permissions. But I want to have a courtesy understanding of these things before I reach out for help. That's why I've been teaching myself how to edit, teaching myself about audio recording, reaching out to other podcasters, and I mean big, big names. I'll message them and say, hey, I'm thinking about starting out. Could you recommend a brand for audio? Could you recommend a webcam? Could you recommend, what can I do to reduce echo in a room?
Mhm.
And a quick message is all they'll send back, but that's how I got the microphone that I'm using now, as opposed to the one that's on the headset.
Right.
This works fine for playing a video game and talking with my friends, but it is by no means a professional quality microphone. So
Right.
I reached out to Chris Van Vliet, who does a wrestling podcast. I think it's either number one or number two in the world.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, he interviews like professional wrestlers and stuff. In the last 2 months, I know he's had Flair and Hogan on.
What? I
Number
love
one or
I,
number
I
two
love
in the world.
wrestling too. So yeah, I know both of those. Yeah.
Okay, he's
Ric Flair is a legend.
He's had basically every legend and almost everybody actively competing. He's had Kenny Omega, he's had Jericho, he's had Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins. I don't think he's had Roman Reigns. I don't think he's had Lesnar. He's had McIntyre. He's had Randy Orton, I think. He's had Cody Rhodes 3 or 4 times. He's had Dustin Rhodes. He had Big Show. But he's also works in Hollywood, so he's had The Rock on as a wrestler and for movies.
Mhm.
He's he interviewed for Barbie, he interviewed for Oppenheimer. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, what brand would you recommend? I know I don't have the money for the equipment that you use, but I want to have something to set my sights on."
Mhm.
So he recommended this brand of microphone to me, and I was right. I couldn't afford the exact one he recommended. But by reaching out and saying, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing," I was able to upgrade my audio quality a good bit.
Right, exactly. Which microphone are you using?
A Shure MV5C.
Okay, okay. I think I know that one. I use I use a Rode mic, but it's like you said, if you don't reach out and ask for help, how are you ever gonna know? So,
Interestingly, the brand Shure is the same brand that Joe Rogan uses.
mhm.
So it's not the same exact microphone, but it is the same brand and the same quality of mic.
And Shure microphones actually are top. They're excuse my language, but they're badass microphones.
They are. If I have my window with the curtain over there open and a plane flies overhead, you hear it.
Yeah, yeah, they're badass microphones. I actually wanted to get that one too, but I was like, I can't afford that one, so I just went with my Rode.
They do sell a regular stick mic, kind of like what you were using, what
Mhm.
you would see like somebody singing with on stage. I think they retail at 89 or 79.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, the Shure SM7B, which is what Rogan uses, retails at like 700.
Oh, yeah, that's expensive.
But
That's really expensive.
that's Joe Rogan, that's partnerships, that's affiliates, that's advertising, which every content creator wants to get there eventually, but we have to take steps along the way.
Right. Start small, like you mentioned earlier. Just start small, but just get started too at the same time. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess that goes into So okay, here's another good one. So in your creative journey that you're on now, right? Like, has there been moments where your perspective on self awareness faced challenges? How did you overcome them, and what did you learn in the process?
I wouldn't say my perspective on it faced challenges, just that new information came to light about the way people see things. I'm sure you saw the post of me in a crop top and fishnets, right?
Mhm.
A lot of people are assuming both my gender expression and sexuality based on that. And it
Mm.
really opened my eyes to a lot of people don't necessarily understand the difference between these things.
Right.
And it's not so much as, it's challenging me, but it is in the sense that trying to open people's eyes and say, "Hey, friend, listen, maybe you're not quite grasping this." I had a lot of people from the Middle East, very traditional Muslim men,
Mhm.
reach out to me and say, "I'm praying for your soul. This is wrong." And I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hang on a second. I appreciate that. I appreciate the kindness, but why do you think this is wrong?" And they would go on to say, "That's not how a man dresses."
Mm.
Well, hang on a second. I'm a man and I dress that way.
Right.
So why the hell not?
Right.
It's your perspective that says men can't dress this way. But if you live in Saudi Arabia in the summer, you're outside in what is essentially a sundress and open-toed sandals. If this was the 60s in America and you showed up to Atlantic City like that, you would be arrested.
Mhm.
High heels were invented for men. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I did not know that.
It was butchers.
Ex-
Old school butchers.
Uh-huh.
So they weren't standing in the blood.
Wow. I
When's
never
the last
knew that.
time? When's the last time you saw a woman butcher? Even today.
Uh-huh.
When's the last time you saw a woman that was actually butchering the animal? Not like cutting the deli meat or working the meat counter, actually taking the full animal and processing it.
I've personally never seen a female butcher.
Exactly. So if
Mhm.
high heels were invented for butchers thousands of years ago, they were invented for men. So why can't a man wear heels? Is it the fact that it makes you taller, or is it the design and style of the shoe?
Right. Right. And you're being your authentic self.
Maybe. I don't think that outfit worked for me, but I tried.
You tried it, right? So it's like I don't know. I feel like society and our societal norms. Um, yeah, it does. It makes you think about
I
people's.
think a lot of it is people being uncomfortable with it and thinking without really thinking. They've always been told men are this, men are that. But you go back to, the Road Warriors. Real men wear pink.
Mhm.
Pink was originally the manly color, not blue. And then toy
Mhm.
companies changed it around. Purple used to be the color of royalty. Why is it feminine now?
Right.
It really is the power that we give to these things. And I believe you have to be the change you want to see in the world.
I agree.
If you're saying men can't dress this way or dressing this way makes you gay, first off, I want to challenge that one right out the gate. If you think clothing can change your sexuality, I highly encourage you to try it. Your world will spin on its head so fast you'll get nauseous.
Right.
You find this. Look at Ryan Reynolds, right?
Mhm.
Voted sexiest man alive several years in a row.
Mhm.
If you think he wouldn't go out in a skin tight latex dress just to turn people's heads, you're crazy.
Right.
And also, he's married to an A-list celebrity and has a kid.
Mhm.
So if you legitimately think wearing a dress can change your sexuality, I challenge you to go put on a dress. Prove it.
Right.
Because it's just like what the DARE program did with a bunch of kids in America. You'll realize quickly that people lied to you, and you'll wonder what else they lied about.
Mhm.
Now, I think it's less the clothing and more the style.
Right.
Men and women bodies are cut differently. They are anatomically different. Men have broader shoulders. So, yeah, if you just grab a woman's shirt off the rack, it's not going to fit you quite right. But that's the cut of the garment, not the style. There's no reason you can't wear a crop top if it looks good on you.
Right. Exactly. I agree.
So a lot of those hardcore Muslim people that reached out to me, and I understand it's a huge cultural difference.
Mhm.
Huge cultural difference. But I broke down and said, hey man, listen, nobody's telling you you can't wear this. If you're saying this makes me a woman, I'm saying you're wrong. It is feminine in its presentation because that's how we associate it. But black and red isn't feminine or masculine. It's just a good color combination. The
Mhm.
outfit might not look like great on me. I don't think my tummy showing in that photo was flattering. I think I need to trim that up some.
I didn't pay too much attention to it
But
because.
I think if I took that same outfit and put a long sleeve purple undershirt under it, it would look entirely different.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, when I brought up those exact points, they started saying, oh, well, no, that makes sense actually.
Right.
So my sense of self and my self awareness didn't really change, but it did challenge me to try to see it from a different person's point of view, how this could be insulting or challenging or offensive to them. And I didn't mean to offend anybody. And if they got offended, I'm I don't want to sound mean, but I'm sorry you feel that way cuz you shouldn't.
Right.
It can make
Exactly.
you uncomfortable and that's fine. But you don't get to dictate how other people feel or should act for your own comforts.
I 100% agree with you on that. The whole thing. I myself, I've had a situation with it, like I guess on people's perspectives. So I'm going through a divorce right now, but my husband and I were together. We were married 7 years, and we've been together 18 years, and we have two beautiful children. Right. Well, my children look just like you. And so we would get, especially like living here in Texas, where it's like a huge conservative state, we would get like different, we would get, we just get looked at all the time. And then plus, my husband and I were 29 years age difference. So he's 29 years my senior. And from other people's perspective, it's like some people think that I was a gold digger. You know, some people think, oh, he just loves, you know, younger women, anything like that. But it's like, no, there was true love there. Like, and we built a beautiful family together and a life together, you know. But it was when we traveled, like across, you know, the United States and everything, or international, that people actually asked questions and, you know, were curious instead of just staring, you know, and making us uncomfortable.
I
Having to learn to
so
get
much prefer that. I
yeah,
so much prefer when people ask questions and we can open an actual conversation.
right, right, exactly. And to evolve their thinking or their beliefs, like how you challenge that person who came at you, but at the same time, you kind of evolve their thinking a little bit, you
Since
know?
we got so deep into that, how do you feel about like understanding ableism? Like, how would you define ableism, and why do you believe it's important to address it in a context of self awareness?
Hmm. It's a hard question, right? Because we all want to be helpful to those around us, but there's a difference in being helpful and being pandering.
Mm-hmm.
You see somebody in a wheelchair, you want to get the door for them because you feel like you're being nice. But that might be pandering because they're fully capable of getting the door themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So is it more on you to not get the door or for them to get the door? Do you wait till they're struggling or do you not? And I really feel like it again boils down to knowing how to communicate effectively and meaningfully. So a lot of the times if I see somebody who's visibly disabled, I'll say, "Hey man, you need a hand? Get the door for you? Anything?" Very casual, just like I would with anybody, almost like if they're carrying a handful of drinks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm going through the door already, I'll grab it. If I see somebody, their arms full of children heading for a store door, I might double back and grab it for them. I think it's very important to recognize that people need to be able to do these things for themselves, but might still need your help.
Right.
And it helps to just be aware of when you're in those situations without having to make a scene out of it. Because
Right.
there's nothing, I don't want to say there's nothing special about them, but really there isn't. They're still people.
Mm-hmm.
They still have to eat, sleep, work. They still have to survive.
Right.
They might need a little bit of extra help, but that's not your responsibility to help. But if you can, you should.
Right. Yeah. I have a friend who lives in Chicago, and she has a condition that has left her like wheelchair bound. But I had never paid attention to when I'm out in public and going places if a place is wheelchair accessible, right? And then but being friends with her, she's made me aware anywhere I go now is if a place is wheelchair accessible, right? And it's just different things like that. Like, I don't know how you could change it in the world to make people more aware of these things, but yeah, it just had me curious. What were your thoughts on it?
The easiest way I found to make people aware is just random little facts of trivia. A good example is that for a wheelchair, I might be wrong on the exact number. It's been years since I looked it up, but I think the exact angle or less than a ramp has to be for the ADA to consider it wheelchair accessible is like 26 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very specific, like not rounded number. And if you can visualize that angle, which I think is somewhere in here, it's very easy to look at a ramp or a hill anywhere you go and go, ah, that's not wheelchair accessible.
Right.
Neat. It's just little things like that.
Through trivia. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's a fun fact too. I didn't know that. Yeah, you're gonna I'm gonna want to
Like
go
I said,
check
there's a
those out.
specific angle. I don't know for sure that it's 26, but I know it. I'm 99% sure it's below 30 degrees.
Right. Wow. So that's cool. So, um, yeah, that was my only question on that. Yeah, I'll have to come back to you like another time and fully go over it. But I know that that's been like a popular topic like in social media these days. It's ableism, and actually me and someone I'm dating right now, we had that conversation too as well. But there's also like so many labels these days in society that I actually had to go and look up what ableism was when he and I had that conversation like a couple months ago. So, how do you feel about that? Like so many labels being put on everything these days.
I think it's both a good and bad thing. So, having access to more descriptive words is never a bad thing.
Mhm.
Using them without understanding them is.
Right.
So, for anything to be discriminatory, there needs to be, an actual effect to it. You can say, "Oh, that's ableist." You put something on a high shelf. No, I just needed it up higher. Like, sorry, I didn't want my liquor cabinet to be children accessible.
Mhm.
That's not ableist. That's just it's up higher. You're not being discriminatory towards anybody, even if you have friends that can't reach it. You're not discriminating against them. You're just putting something in the place where it goes.
Mhm.
Whereas if you purposely said, that guy won't be able to reach it, that's different.
Right.
There's also a big difference between being prejudiced and racist. One is your own feelings without action, which everybody is to some degree.
Mhm.
And I don't like saying that's okay, but it kind of is. You're entitled to feel the way that you feel. When it starts affecting your relationships or the way you actually treat people is when it becomes a problem.
Mhm.
And that applies across the board. I just more or less got into it with somebody yesterday about cisgender, and again the difference between sexuality and gender and sex. They didn't believe me that gender is a spectrum.
Mhm.
How do you feel about gender as a spectrum?
What do you what do you mean?
Okay, so most people's understanding there's masculine
Yes.
and there's feminine, right? So if this is 100% masculine and this is 100% feminine, where's my hair lie on that? Which side?
I wouldn't put it on either side. I mean, your hair is your
Congratulations, you
choice.
understand it. That's as complicated as it gets, really.
Yeah, your hair is your choice. How you want your hair to be.
So, your gender is an expression of yourself, how you present yourself to the world, either feminine or masculine,
Mm,
and both are fine. You can be a very effeminate straight man.
yeah.
You can enjoy doing makeup and all these traditionally, doing makeup, baking, and all these traditionally effeminate things without being attracted to men.
Right. I agree.
And you can also be a biological male and be effeminate.
Mhm.
That's where people are getting the confusion with gender, right? So, gender is absolutely a social construct. It's the way we identify and present ourselves.
Okay.
Whereas your medical sex is male, female, and has a lot more to do with your genetics.
Mm. I understand now.
So, he was saying that by presenting effeminately, it means you want to be a girl, you feel like a girl, and you must be attracted to men because girls should be attracted to men, and that's normal. And that we don't need cisgendered as a word because normal already describes it.
Mm.
Okay, maybe you don't need cisgender in most normal circumstances.
Mhm.
I'll give them that. But the word existing on its own isn't a bad thing.
Right.
And me having long hair is a great example of gender on a spectrum. Long hair is a feminine trait. That's just a fact.
I would with the long hair, I don't know where I would put it because I just feel like You should be able to
Think overall.
wear
When
your
you
hair how you
think
want it, whether it's feminine
right,
or
but
masculine.
when you think men's hairstyles, right?
Mhm.
Just run it through in your head real quick. Take 2 seconds. Men's hairstyles, right?
Right.
90% of them aren't any longer than this.
True.
You think female hairstyles. First thing that comes to mind is a high ponytail. I can do that. Low ponytail. I can do that. I can do buns. I can split this. And if I really wanted to, I could do twin tails.
Uh-huh.
All very feminine hairstyles.
Right.
But that's still just your presentation to the world. And that's what gender is.
Mm.
I think there's a lot
I
of
think
labels
men
that
with
are
long
thrown in
hair is
there.
sexy.
I think there's a lot of labels that are thrown in there that we don't need.
Right.
But they're thrown in there because everybody wants to feel like they belong. Everybody wants to have a place. And by alienating these things and saying, no, you can only be one or the other, you're creating a void for people to fill.
Okay.
So picture, a light. Most lights you have on or off. Or you only have really bright or really dim.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't like that, so they invented a dimmer switch. Well, then they said, well, I want a different colored light. So then they invented smart light bulbs that use LEDs. Now we have light bulbs that you control the brightness and color of with an app on your phone.
Right. That's true. I never thought about it like that. My perspective was I was like, this is just too many labels to keep up with, and I just feel like with being so aware with myself, I think about others and I'm like, am I going to offend this person? I think too much about offending someone these days. And so that's what I think about. I'm like, the labels are making it too complex. But since you broke that down to me the way you broke it down to me, it makes sense. I hadn't had, a conversation like this to where it's been a part of a conversation to where it will broaden my thinking like the way you just did.
So I think another big part of it is that different people are offended at different levels.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not on you to know what will or won't offend them.
Mhm.
It is on you to make up for it if you do. To not continue that behavior intentionally.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a friend that transitioned and their name used to be Jose,
Mhm.
and they transitioned into a girl and their name is now Julia. If you've known this person for 8, 9 years, your default will be Jose for a long time.
Mhm.
If Julia gets upset that you're using their old name, that's not on you. It's going to take a long time to break out of that. And you need to make the effort to. As long as
Right.
you're making the effort, then Julia shouldn't be snapping at you.
Right.
But if you do it intentionally, that's entirely different. You are purposely disrespecting what they chose to be called.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's their name. Alright, well, John Smith, if I walked up to you and said, hey, Nancy, how you doing? You wouldn't like it.
Right. Exactly.
It's the same thing.
Mhm.
But to the people that are transitioning and are being offended by these things, you need to try to be more understanding of people having sudden changes and having to reacclimate.
Mhm. That's pretty good advice. I like that, and I'm gonna use it. So, yeah. Um. Okay. Final question. So, for any fellow creators tuning in who's probably enjoying this conversation the same way I am, so everybody make sure you go check the description box below and follow Frog Visage, right?
Visage.
Visage, yes. On all platforms. So for any if there's any fellow creators tuning in, what advice do you have regarding incorporating self-awareness into their creative process, and how has it contributed to your own creative success?
It's knowing your audience
Mhm.
and knowing that you enjoy what you do. Um, I'm struggling with my own content because I don't want to say I don't believe in my own content, but it doesn't feel like I'm putting out something of value to me. other people are finding value in it, but these are things that I just already live by.
Mhm.
Really, it's not so much being self-aware as it is knowing your limits and knowing what you should be expecting to do. You don't need, you know, Mr. Beast's filming setup. You don't need a whole crew to get started.
Right.
The most important thing is to pick a schedule and set to it consistently. To just actually get out there and do the work.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be a quick journey.
No. Mm-mm.
And you don't rely on going viral. Rely on consistently building an audience. The effect absolutely snowballs.
Right.
And if you follow the journey of anybody who's made it, if you track everything they've done, there was like 100-person celebration, then there was a 200, then there was a 5, then there was 1,000, then there was a 10,000. And it's not that they didn't appreciate all these milestones along the way. It's that it started rolling so much faster and gathering so much more steam that they couldn't keep up.
Mhm.
And it's important to be aware of your limits and what you can do. I still try to respond to every single message that comes into my inbox. There will come a point in time where I am not physically capable of doing that.
Right. Exactly.
But until that time hits, I'm trying to give everybody at least something to let them know I've seen it. Because I do see everything that comes into me.
And I have to say, like, so it took a lot of courage to like reach out to you the way that I did. And for you to respond back within a couple of hours, I was like, what? Because I was like, I know it's just gonna get lost in, his messages and things like that. But yeah, the way you
I
responded, I
have
was so
at
surprised.
minimum sent a reaction or emoji to everything that's ever come into my inbox.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. And that just kind of shows like the self-awareness that you have um and the empathy towards other people too. So I thought it was pretty cool. And like you said, you're like the content that you create, you're actually walking what you talk. You're not just
That's
talking, you're
I
doing the
think
work too.
I think that's a big part of why it seems so hard for me to create content is because a lot of people create content for entertainment purposes.
Mhm.
And I'd like to do that. I like anime, I like gaming, I'd like to break down these things and discuss them and link them to different things. So far, that hasn't been my content. So far, my content has been the way I approach my own life.
Right.
And it seems like there might be a lot there. Everybody says, oh, you're so deep. But really, I just take a handful of simple content, simple concepts, and apply them wherever I can.
Mhm.
Oh no, they're not being mean about it. Control the controllable. Things that are completely outside of your control, try not to stress over. If I'm sitting at a red light and a plane crashes into my car or the car in front of me, I'm not going to fret about being late to work because I couldn't stop a plane from falling out of the sky.
Right.
And something like that did actually happen once. A plane landed in my yard.
What?
Yep, little two-seater Casanova crash landed in my yard.
Wow, did it damage anything though? Like your
Damage
house?
at the yard. Nope, just the grass.
Oh, well, that's a great story for the grass.
Shut down about 3 blocks around the house though.
Wow.
Because you had to get emergency personnel, FAA, the fire trucks, the ambulance.
Mhm.
So I wasn't too worried about cooking dinner that night because what am I going to do? Tell them, hey, you got to get this plane off my lawn. I need to barbecue.
Right, exactly. But I mean, I feel the same way you do. Like because like I said, the podcast is all about, self-awareness and fostering healthier relationships with that whether personal or professional. And I have this conversation with my close friends all the time and our audio engineer and I'm just like, man, like I'm trying to just get like 1,000 downloads and I'm like I've been going for 7 months now. You almost lose your passion because it's like I want to create the content that I want to create, like be the content that you want to create. And
The
it's like
the
you
other
oh go ahead.
the other big difference that you have to decide on for yourself is, are you doing this personally or professionally? If you have an artistic drive and a drive to create that you feel the need to fulfill, fulfill it. Don't worry about the views, don't worry about the money. Create and share it. If it blows up, be open to the opportunity to turn it into something full time.
Mhm.
But there is a big difference in your purpose and the way you have to go about it. If
Mhm.
you're doing it for yourself to create something, or if you're doing it to make a living.
Right.
The people, a lot of the people that are doing content creation at the highest possible level didn't set out to do it professionally.
Mhm.
That was not their goal. Look at the Markipliers. He just financed his own movie out of pocket.
Oh, yeah, I actually just found out about him, like, within the last year or so. Yeah, he's huge.
And then you look at then you look at how big he is and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, like, how did I not know about this guy?
He was in college for engineering, started creating videos because he wanted to create something.
Mhm.
And he did that for about a year before it got to a point where he had to say, "Hey, I'm making enough money off of this where I need to decide, do I keep going to school or do I drop out of college to play video games?"
Mhm.
But he didn't not go to college to make videos. He made videos because he had that creative drive.
Right.
So I feel like for a lot of content creators, you have to decide if you're trying to do it professionally or just personally. Are you creating content because you like creating content, or are you just trying to make a buck? Because if all you're trying to do is make a buck, then as soon as you're not seeing results, you're going to lose your passion. If you're
Mhm.
expecting quick money out of content creation, you're doing it wrong. It is a steady, slow grind.
Mhm.
But if you're just doing it for the passion of it, then don't worry about the views. Don't worry about who sees it. If you want it to be seen, just keep posting. Put it on Reddit. Find the communities that this would flourish in, that it fits in, and share it there.
Mm,
Refine
I
your
never
art.
thought about
Get better.
Reddit.
There's a subreddit for everything. There's a community for everything. It can be a horrible place, just like anywhere else on the internet.
Mhm.
It's way more anonymous than any real other social platform, but you can very much so customize your feed easily.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm very passionate about it because I'm like you. I feel like it's boring content, but it's like things that I apply that I'm sure someone else could implement into their life as well, and just find some joy, in this chaotic world, with just a little bit of awareness. But I also would like it to be a professional thing. Also, I mean, I would love to podcast full time. So
That's what I'm saying though. Like podcasting full time, figure after tax with taxes, you want to probably aim for 75,000 a year to be able to do it full time independently,
right.
because you're responsible for your own taxes, your own upkeep, equipment, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money to bring in.
That is.
So instead of focusing on I need more downloads, I need more this, if you don't have the time and energy to be able to dedicate to running a small business by yourself, because
Mhm.
that's what it is. It's advertising, it's negotiations, it's contracts, it's brand deals. If that's what you want, then go for it. But don't just make what everybody else is making and expect it to work.
Right.
They already did that.
Right.
That ship has sailed. Um, a good example for a podcast that I'd like to emulate, not the content, but the vibe of, is Otaku's Anonymous.
Otaku's
Um,
Anonymous?
spelled with an O, like somebody that's really, really into Japanese culture.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's two YouTubers. One does reaction content for anime. The other is probably the single most knowledgeable man about Naruto, other than the author, on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very informative styled podcast. They take what's happening in anime or manga and they talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But they make jokes along the way. They play a game or two. They do tier lists. Each episode works out to be like 2.5 hours anymore.
Oh, okay.
But they've blended their expertise in with their conversations to make it informative and entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
But also, both of them have been doing it for 5 or 6 years full time at this point.
Right.
So they had an audience built on something first and then grew with it.
Mm-hmm.
So For anybody that's looking for advice on how to grow, it's finding your niche, knowing your content, learning to love what you do across the board, the whole process. You have to find some way to enjoy and being consistent. That is the single most important thing. If you say, I'm uploading daily, you have to upload daily. You have to hold yourself accountable to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to make it full-time professionally, it's going to be very difficult. It will be trials and tribulations.
Mm-hmm.
I've only made about $70 total off of everything I put out, the viral video, and the handful of mental health coaching things I've done on the side
Mm-hmm.
in 9 months.
Wow. Yeah.
If you add up the podcast appearances I've done, the messages I've sent, the time that I've spent, I'm under 50 cents an hour.
Damn.
But
Way
I
undervalued.
also have I also have brands reaching out to me now that want to do partnerships. They want me to be an ambassador for their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. I'm probably just going to keep making content so long as people still interact with it and still think they want to hear or still want to hear what I have to say. I'm not opposed to doing this professionally, but the income needs to be there for me to be able to dedicate enough time to it.
Right.
I got very, very, very lucky and had a platform to launch off of.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do not and will not. So it is going to be a slow, steady grind. I think TikTok, you need a minimum of 100,000 followers before you can start getting paid.
What? See, I'm not on
And I
TikTok,
know
so
your
I don't know.
TikToks, and I know your TikToks have to be at least a minute long to qualify.
Oh, wow.
So to most people, finding 100,000 followers is insane.
Mm-hmm.
If you gain one a day, it's going to take you years.
Mm-hmm.
But the more people are watching, the more people are likely to share it, word of mouth, or to just share it out on their feed, to remix with it, which grows and grows and grows and grows and grows.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on your content, you might not ever hit 100,000. But that's where you have to decide, is this even feasible for me?
Right. That's true. Got to think practical about it at the same time. Yeah.
Trying to do content creation professionally is absolutely business oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to think of it as a business. You need to look at opportunity costs, investment costs, possible lost revenue. You know, there's a lot of people out there who charge $2,000 to $4,000 to show up on a podcast.
Right.
Part of that is, are they serious? I've seen a couple content creators, because I followed them, where they'll charge upwards of 10 to 15 grand to make an appearance.
Right.
And then when their appearance is done, they'll hand the money back. Here's your money back.
That's kind. They just wanted to see if they're serious, like you said.
100%. They wanted to know that, yes, I value your time.
You're right.
It's one thing to say it, it's another to show it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Well, I definitely value your time. You just dropped like $1 million worth of game on here, especially right in that last little segment. You helped me out a lot getting clear on some things. And yeah, I hope that you find the brand partnerships that align with you. I would definitely love for you to be successful in content creation and the money starts flowing in because I love your content.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah. So I hope that, it all starts to work out and, those partnerships are in alignment with what you want to do and you start to prosper with it. You deserve it. So, yeah. And
That's kind of you to say.
thank you. And as I always say to my listeners, thank you for your most precious gift and that is your time. Because yeah, that's our most precious gift. Unfortunately right now I
Time
couldn't,
time is the single most valuable thing in the world. You can spend it, but you can never earn more of it. Everything you can do to give yourself more time to do the things that you enjoy is important.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm sure the Flow with Joe listeners agree also. Um, because, yeah, it's our most valuable asset, as you just said. So, everybody, thank you all for tuning in. Go over and follow Rob on all platforms. His plug is in the description box, so make sure you go down to the description and you follow him and follow his Twitch account, follow everything anywhere you can because you'll get value wherever you find him. And Rob,
And anywhere you see me,
mm-hmm.
please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to message. If you want to see something, me react to something, you want my opinion on something, reach out. Ask. I promise I'll at least see it. It might take me a day or two depending on what you're asking for. I might have to think on it or do some research if I've never heard of it. But I'm always open to a conversation, and I love hearing from people.
Yeah, and also, so you're doing coaching calls as well.
Here and there, as people have reached out.
Yeah, so definitely feel free to reach out to him for a coaching call. Um, because that was kind of what we had there at the end. Like the last little 20 minutes we were just speaking, you were kind of giving me, some coaching there. So I feel like this whole interview has been that. So, but I appreciate it. And definitely, if you do find Rob anywhere, like he said, feel free to reach out to him. Um, if you have questions, like I said, he reached out to me like super quickly, and then he followed up on his word, and here we are now. And so I'm incredibly grateful, and I thank you so much for that, Rob. Even with all of my technical difficulties today.
Not a problem. It happens to everybody.
Right? Yeah, I'm glad you were there, because I was able to stay cool, calm, and collected, and was just like, just going with the flow.
Flow with the Joe.
Right, flow with Joe. So, all right. That is it on this episode of Flow with Joe. We will see you back here again next Monday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Toodles, poodles.
Hey, boys and girls, thank you for watching my mom's channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell. And I'll see you later. A Monday, always a Monday.
Um, yes, thank you for, I forgot my outro, Rob. Here we go.